No, they don't come next Tuesday. They don't have a chance unless they cheat. As you documented very well, there's so many cases already of just irregularities and misdeeds and evidence of the corruption in our election process. And that's the only hope that they have. Because the fact is, Democrats do not like democracy. They don't want the voters to decide. They want to decide for the voters. And look at how that has worked out.
Liz Harrington, Donald Trump's spokesperson, telling us exactly what we have been telling everybody else, that the GOP are trying to cheat, that the GOP don't care for fair elections, that the GOP are spreading propaganda and lies to prevent this election falling into the hands of the Democrats. She is projecting the message that is clear. It's not the Democrats that refused the peaceful transfer of power in 2020. It's not the Democrats that claimed that drop boxes were in some way fraudulent or mail-in voting was in some way fraudulent. It's not Democrats that are election deniers. Democrats play by the rules. They care about the integrity of the system of voting in the United States. And if you don't have your vote, what do you have? What kind of country do you want to live in? Because all of this election denial and the language we're hearing from GOP candidates, including candidates who are running to actually be in charge of running elections, is that if the GOP doesn't win, then there must be fraud. Now, just think about that for a moment. What exactly that entails. That really is an entire political party, effectively half of the votes, coming from a party that does not believe in the system that has just been used to collect those votes. We need to maintain the integrity of America's voting system. It's called democracy. Now, increasingly, we're hearing that the GOP don't care for democracy. They have no interest in maintaining the safety and the future of American democracy. Now, I personally think they associate democracy with Democrats because of the semantics of it. And so therefore, democracy, that's a Democrat thing, in the same way that Ron DeSantis says that climate change is a Democrat thing. We have to try and keep our heads together here. What is normal? What is that kind of line? At what point do we cross the Rubicon and start living in this upside-down world? Because that's what's happening at the moment. There are two Americas. There's the one that sticks to the rules, that maintains the status quo. And there is this insane space with these GOP candidates talking utter garbage about the America that they live in. They talk about immigration in a way that does not represent what's actually happening at the border, that doesn't actually affect them directly. And yet they've created this whole propaganda, and they're just pushing it and pushing it. And it works. It seeps in. People think there is a serious immigration problem. Well, every country is suffering from this in the same way that every country is suffering from inflation right now. It's not Joe Biden's inflation. It's in every single country. Interest rates are through the roof in most countries. And it's because of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, two things that affect the entire world. So to try and politicize it and make it specific to the Democrats is pure propaganda. It's not based in truth. The other elephant in the room is the fact that the GOP are encouraging people to not vote. This is something that they do traditionally, and they're doing very much again this time. They claim that they want everybody to vote, but of course they don't. And it's actions speaking louder than words. Removing drop boxes or claiming that they're in some way fraudulent, when of course they're not. It's a standard that's used right around the world. Mail-in voting might be fraudulent. Well, it's not. It's a standard used right around the world. Removing polling places, so there's literally like one place to go to in the entire state to go and cast your ballot. Trying to, in some way, reduce the number of people voting, because they know that if everybody votes, of all colours and stripes, that they will lose. Because the United States of America ultimately is a progressive country. It is a forward-thinking, modern country that is in line with other modern countries, whereby we allow women the right to choose, where we allow people to marry whoever they love. This is living in a modern world. It's not about imposing your religious beliefs on people that are not religious. That happens in countries that you probably don't want to visit. And yet, for some reason, the GOP recognize that by enabling everyone to vote, they will probably lose. And so they come up with all of these schemes, all of this propaganda, all of these lies to sow doubt in the system, to try and prevent people from voting. And they're actually physically, in the case of Florida with Ron DeSantis and his kind of, election task force, arresting people who just went to vote. People who thought they had the right to vote, knew they had the right to vote, were told they had the right to vote. DeSantis changes the rules, sends the sheriff's department to go and arrest them. We've seen these images. It's terrifying. Changing people's registrations by knocking on doors and saying, oh, I'm just checking that your registration is in place, and then changing it from Democrat to Republican. These types of tactics, gerrymandering, redistricting, all of the effort that is going on behind the scenes to try and cheat so the GOP can have the upper hand. We, all of us, and I'm a European, I don't even get to vote in US elections. They don't allow people like me, immigrants, to vote. All of us need to save democracy because it is so fragile. It doesn't last forever. The only reason a democracy exists is because people play by the rules. People respect the integrity of the democratic system. One vote per person. Votes get counted. Winner gets announced. That's it. It's not complicated. But tragically, some of these extremist candidates, like Carrie Lake, who's very good on camera, a former newscaster, is talking in a way, and a very convincing way, a very compelling way, about election integrity that is not based in any kind of truth. She is literally making it up, and she knows she is. She knows that she's lying, but she knows that she's a good liar, and she knows that this is her crusade, her personal crusade, to claim that Joe Biden is not the legitimate president, and to say that 2020 was stolen and that Trump should be the president. It is insane, and yet she is getting media attention because the media does not push back against these people. There's this, it's like an elephant in the room. Like, why does the American media not push back against these people? It just doesn't happen. And I'm talking about all sides. There is it's almost as if people find it amusing, like taking democracy for granted and the idea that it could fall. It's almost like, it's a bit like people that drive slowly past a crash on the freeway to have a look, ambulance chasers or whatever you choose to call them. It's almost as if there are Americans, and I include the media and journalists, that are like, well, I wonder what would happen if the system did collapse. Maybe we should just, take a look, be good for ratings. That is the tragedy of this, is that something that is so delicate as an entire democratic system that holds a country together with a Congress and a Senate and an executive branch and a Supreme Court, the reason that this system is in place is because it maintains the integrity of the entire country. And one by one, piece by piece, these are being dismantled. We've seen it with the Supreme Court, packing it with extremist conservatives, including Clarence Thomas, who, of all of them, was the one who now clearly is partly responsible for the attack on January 6th. He is facilitating and maintaining this election denial, along with his wife. We really are very unsafe in the United States right now, with the GOP not wanting people to vote, going out of their way to make sure that happens. And no one seems to be asking why. People don't seem to be talking about it. You know, it's a bit like why no one says, well, why does Donald Trump not want you to see his tax returns? I mean, I never really hear that being discussed. They know that he's protecting his tax returns. He's the first president in 40 years that has not shown his tax returns. It's obvious why, right? Because of alleged tax evasion and because he's obviously not as rich as he wants you to think he is. And he doesn't donate to charity, and all the things that he claims, they're all hidden in these tax returns. Also, the fact that he doesn't pay any tax. The fact that, a former president is going out of his way to the Supreme Court to prevent the people from seeing his tax returns just suggests to me that we're dealing here with a career criminal, and yet no one seems to talk about it like that. Nobody seems to ask why. Why doesn't Trump want you to see his tax returns? Why don't the GOP want you to vote? Why are they sowing election doubt? Why? So we have a choice in these midterms. We're just a few days away from the vote, and of course, please be reminded that it's unlikely that all of the votes will be counted on the day. And if you voted by mail, then obviously that's going to make a big difference as well. It takes a few days to get the vote together. And the problem will be, as was the case in 2020, that when Donald Trump was ahead, he announced that he was the winner. He literally went on television and said that he'd won, even though all the votes hadn't been counted. And then when he lost, he refused to concede. This is the behavior that you see from countries like Turkey or Russia or Viktor Orban in Hungary, who was like a star of a CPAC conference. These people are autocrats. These people are dictators. They don't care for your vote. They don't care whether you get your vote or not. They just care about absolute power. That is what they want. And they will get it at whatever cost. And that is what you're going to see from GOP candidates in these midterms, and that's what you'll see from Donald Trump in 2024. They care nothing for the system. They care nothing for the very country that they claim to love. I'm Anthony Davis. You can hear me every day on the 5-Minute News podcast and on Sundays on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs. It wasn't rigged, you're just a loser. At store.meidastouch.com. That's store.meidastouch.com.